I was really inspired by by this quote from Annie Dillard that just goes, "How we spend our days is, of course, how we spend our lives." And I realized that very much so, the small things we do each day become the blur of a life well lived. We don't remember specific days more often than not, unless there's something really exciting. But more often we remember that because we went out and walked for 5 or 10 minutes or went for a jog, we were a jogger or we were a walker or, we were just that thing because we did it. And that sort of is embracing the identity of doing things and the identity of habit. The greats pretty much all say that in order to write a book, you just have to sit down and write 500 or 2,000 words a day, however many it is. And, maybe 10% of them will be worth anything at all, but you just have to kind of show up and sit down and write. And so that is where a lot of the idea around creativity came from as this third pillar to explore an intentional life. Because once you've cleared the space, once you've started showing up in ways that really matter to you and the people around you, then you have this foundation to start exploring things like side hustles that can really enhance your life, make money on the side to help your family, do whatever. It could be just an artistic pursuit. It could be any form of creating. I do believe that we get into the deepest levels of flow, this like satisfying focused state, when we are just working through something on a problem, working on creating something, and we all have this opportunity to tap into that.
That was Anthony Ongaro, and this is the Brendan Carr Podcast. Today, my guest is Anthony Ongaro. He is the founder of Break the Twitch. You can find him on social media, his website, breakthetwitch.com. Everything is Break the Twitch. And his idea here is that we have this twitch. We have these impulses, these things that we do that don't really serve us, things like checking email, making meaningless purchases on Amazon, checking all those notifications on your phone. And Anthony, in this episode, he talks about some great ideas for how to get yourself away from those compulsive behaviors, and more importantly, how to then fill up the time that you find with things that give meaning to your life. So if you've been running around busy, doing things, feeling like you're checking a lot of stuff throughout the day but not really getting anywhere, this episode's for you. When you say the twitch, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, the twitch actually has become a lot of different things, but there is one sort of overriding definition that I like to use, which is it is an unproductive, impulsive response to different forms of discomfort. So the discomfort can be hunger, it can be wanting something, it can be all kinds of different things, boredom. And the twitch is the way that we sort of make that discomfort go away for a little while through online purchases, cell phone checks, different things like that.
Yeah, and this started for you with the online purchasing, right? That was kind of what drew it to your attention?
It is. The very first thing for me was the Amazon one-click purchase button. And that was something that I was doing pretty subconsciously or unconsciously, not really thinking too much about it, buying little things here and there. And after a while, it just seemed like it was adding up quite a bit. There were boxes coming to the house all the time. Had a discussion with my wife, my lovely wife, about it, and we went in and I actually looked up 4 years of my spending history on Amazon and put it in a really pretty Excel spreadsheet with charts and all kinds of pivot tables and good stuff. And it really highlighted just how much those small actions were adding up to over a long period of time. And it ended up being a pretty large amount for someone in their early 20s. And looking at that kind of shocked me into realizing that the small things we do very frequently add up big time, either positively or negatively. And we sort of have to navigate that for ourselves.
Yeah. And you say that this is all a response to discomfort. What is it about grabbing the phone or clicking some new gadget on Amazon that helps us to temporarily kind of squash that discomfort?
Well, all of these things that have made their way into our lives, like online shopping, like social media, smartphones, apps, different things like that, at this point, they have all been designed to optimize their own products for usage. Meaning, as much use as possible. And what they've done to do that is build in things that trigger our psychological desire for a dopamine release or for serotonin, for the different things that we essentially can become addicted to. And just like any other addiction, we basically use it as a coping mechanism. We use it as a way to stay distracted. Everything from social discomfort to, you get to a restaurant before your friend and you're standing there, you don't really know what to do with yourself. So you take out your phone and they walk up while you're on your phone and you look up and see them, those little things. All of those are these different forms of discomfort, and all of these solutions, what I would call them relatively unintentional solutions, are available and being made available because of capitalism. And now I don't want to say that capitalism is bad, and I don't want to say that these products are bad because they connect people. They're all doing things. We never would have started using them in the first place if it didn't have some inherent value for us. But at this point, they've been evolved and adapted in ways that really need some extra attention in terms of how they're affecting us and how we're integrating them into our lives.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that they have value. I think that's something that a lot of these companies come back to when there are arguments.
Sure.
Like, oh, well, but think of all the people who do business through Facebook and stuff, and that is tremendous for a lot of people. And this is something I know you're a fan of Cal Newport and deep work and all that. This is something he comes back to too. We acknowledge that, but it seems that the design and the algorithms and the way that it comes together is a very tough hurdle for a human mind to overcome because it's designed to get at us. How do you suggest that people make changes?
Well, there are a lot of varying ways to make changes, and it starts really with creating something that I like to call intentional friction. It's essentially putting friction back into the process of doing these actions, and in a way that reflects an element of environmental design, changing your environment slowly but surely to reflect the things you want to do in your life so that it gives you a better chance to actually do them and remove some of the temptation in that way, and just gives you a fighting chance at putting some space back into that process. So with a smartphone, one of the best ways is just kind of deleting apps. It's turning the screen black and white is something that people do to make it a little less appealing. It's pretty dreadful looking at it at the screen in this just gray, monotone. It's really not super exciting. And so that's exactly kind of what it's supposed to do. The element is you just want to add in some space, add in some friction so that you can actually make a choice instead of just popping your phone out. And if you close your eyes, I bet you could probably open Instagram without even looking, just because your finger knows where to go. So moving apps around, deleting apps, putting apps in like a hidden folder somewhere, and also putting the physical phone in a place that is not super accessible. Don't leave it on the table when you're at lunch with your friend, like different things like that. Keeping it in your pocket is the first step. Keeping it in the living room or the office when you're in the bedroom is a great way to start as well. So there are all kinds of different levels that you can incorporate this idea of intentional friction into the process. And the other aspect is like Amazon. That one's hard. You kind of have to just, one, try to avoid browsing for stuff because it's hard to want stuff that you don't know exists, right? And then the second thing is try doing like a shopping ban. I have a lot of friends that have done shopping bans for up to a year successfully with creating some very specific rules around what they can buy, what they can't. And one of those rules can be whatever it is, I can't buy it on Amazon.com. I can buy it on Target.com if I want to, which seems to be, I don't know, maybe a little less convenient than Amazon, or maybe I just can get whatever I want, but I have to drive to the store to get it. And that friction of having to get up and go to the store is enough to make you consider how badly you really want that thing. So there are all sorts of ways to do it.
Yeah, and these are lots of ways to the digital world where I think it's remarkable how quickly it's become so influential. Like your story with the Amazon purchases personally and things, and I hear stats that people open their phone 100 times a day and stuff. But something I've heard you speak very eloquently about in, I don't know if it was your podcast or your YouTube channel, is that shopping malls are really designed to take advantage of this too. How does a shopping mall get people's attention and get people to buy?
Oh, there have been so many great studies of this. And obviously there's an entire industry based around if you put the cheapest deals in the back, it forces you to walk through the entire store on your way in so that you see stuff, and people are more likely to just, the more things you see, the more things you're likely to buy, essentially, when you're out shopping. So there's that. There's the idea that loud music is played in so many stores. You'll be at a mall and just be exhausted and not really know why. And the idea is that by overwhelming the senses with music, with bright lights and a lot of visual stimulation, you sort of wear down your decision engine, your executive function of being able to make good decisions over and over and over. And it's been also shown that you make worse decisions as you go on through the day and get more tired. And so it uses that same thing to kind of push you along so that you can consume more and show less restraint when it comes to buying what you actually need versus some new stuff you buy. Things are arranged in certain ways, certain colors are used. It really goes to every possible extent, legal extent, I would imagine, that tries to just get us to spend more and feel like we need more stuff.
Yeah, I've been aware for a while, I think, of the digital stuff. But when I heard you start talking about shopping malls, I reflected back to, I think it was about 2 months ago, I was in Dubai for New Year's. And
wow.
Dubai has this shopping mall culture.
Yeah.
And I remember we went to the malls to see things. Like there was an indoor ski ramp, an indoor ski slope, and there was an indoor ice skating rink. And there were all these spectacles within the city of Dubai to see in the malls. And so we just went. But I realize now that's a fantastic funnel to bring people, like you said, if you got a deal in the back and people walk through the whole store, if you've got a ski slope in the back, you walk through the whole shopping mall. And on the way, we bought food, and I think we got some gloves for the skiing. And, you know, it's bound to happen when you get exposed to this design.
Yes. And we here in Minneapolis right now have the Mall of America. It's, I think, the biggest mall in the US where there's roller coasters inside. And it's an activity hub, obviously, in addition to that. And I think that's a way that malls maybe are pivoting, because the retail outlets are definitely diminishing, I'll say, just because of the ease of online purchasing and how quickly we expect things to happen for us now. Like, it's funny that the idea of 2-day shipping used to be amazing. And now if something doesn't get to you within 2 days or isn't available for Prime, you're like, what? Seriously? And you get frustrated. It's like, wait a minute, this is crazy. So yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of things. And obviously for little kids too, cereal boxers have certain bright colors, cartoons, different things that catch kids' attention and get them to want it and ask for stuff, even though they don't really know what it is. It's designed to manipulate the senses.
Right. Yeah, I totally forgot that you're right near the Mall of America.
Yeah.
And your philosophy on all of this, it seems to hinge on 3 real pillars to get to a more intentional state of life. You talk about decluttering, building new habits, and then being creative, really, with your life and with the space that all of that will provide. How do you suggest that people sort of attack those 3 steps?
Yeah, the minimalism, habits, creativity sort of pyramid was something that evolved out of my own process when I started decluttering, when I started exploring the results of what it meant to spend a bunch of money on Amazon and look back and wish that I had spent it traveling or doing other things or saved it. And so in the process of decluttering, I realized that if you don't choose intentional actions to fill the space, other things will fill the void. It will just become time on Reddit. It will become time doing just other stuff by default. And so building into the space that you create with minimalism is a wonderful way to do that. And I think a lot of the time habits can be sort of a gross word for people because it's very associated with, oh, I have this bad habit of, and it's really not that. To me, it very much is just the little ways we show up day to day and how we're showing up in the world, how we're serving, how we're just being ourselves, right? What do we want that to look like? I was really inspired by by this quote from Annie Dillard that just goes, how we spend our days is, of course, how we spend our lives. And I realized that very much so, that the small things we do each day become the blur of a life well lived. We don't remember specific days more often than not, unless there's something really exciting. But more often we remember that because we went out and walked for 5 or 10 minutes or went for a jog for a mile or two, most of the days in any given week, we were a jogger or we were a walker or, we were just that thing because we did it. And that sort of is embracing the identity of doing things and the identity of habit. So from there, it's like, essentially, what can you explore? The creativity piece sits on top of this foundation of habits. The greats pretty much all say that in order to write a book, you just have to sit down and write 500 or 2,000 words a day, however many it is. And, maybe 10% of them will be worth anything at all, but you just have to kind of show up and sit down and write. And so that is where a lot of the idea around creativity came from as this third pillar to explore an intentional life. Because once you've cleared the space, once you've started showing up in ways that really matter to you and the people around you, then you have this foundation to start exploring things like side hustles that can really enhance your life, make money on the side to help your family, do whatever. It could be just an artistic pursuit. It could be any form of creating. And you don't have to sell it. It doesn't have to be a business. But I do believe that we get into the deepest levels of flow, this like satisfying, focused state, when we are just working through something on a problem, working on creating something. And we all have this opportunity to tap into that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this intentional life is something that we all want. And yet it's so easy to give it away all the time. And it comes down to, I think what you've really hit here. It comes down to a layering of the decisions that you make in life, down to the basics, and then looking at what habits am I going to build to shape that. It's a really beautiful thing. I wonder, Anthony, kind of a personal question. You've made a decision that is the height of intentionality, in my opinion. I noticed you have tattoos.
Yes.
How did you pick your tattoos?
That's great. That question did not go where I had expected it to go, and I like that. So that's a great question. I waited until I was about 30 to get my first tattoo. Very, very edgy. Waited a long time. Thought about it a lot. And my first tattoo is it's a triangle on my forearm, and it's a right triangle that's extended out. So it's more of a rectangle, actually. In the format where it's not a perfect square. And it is a diagram of flow. And the diagram of flow became a concept so important to me that I very simply tattooed it on my arm so that it would always be with me. And it's also just a reminder that with flow, with this process of finding your flow, creative flow, with meditating, any process, it's always hardest in the beginning when you're sitting down. For the meditation example, right when you sit down, okay, I'm like talking through the mental thoughts, right? Okay, how long am I going to do this for? Am I really going to sit here for 10 minutes? How long is 10 minutes? Wait, what if something happens? What if someone comes to the door while I'm here? Right? So your brain is very upfront, very resistant to this idea. Oh, I'm starting to get tired, right? Like it's very resistant to this thing right in the beginning. But I've found time and time again with creative pursuits, with different things, that as long as you push through that discomfort, you sort of just allow that initial time to pass. It gets easier and it gets easier. And the triangle sort of represents the ramping up of that process. And then you get into this creative flow. And the problem is you can't let yourself get distracted because you'll start over again at the bottom. It's this very kind of interesting thing that's why I'm so passionate about turning off notifications and controlling your environment as much as possible to allow yourself the space to get through that discomfort initially that lets you get to this kind of mythical flow state, right? And so for me, that tattoo is a reminder of just simply letting that discomfort sit through it. It's the exact same thing with writing too. I found, man, that blank page, you just sit there, and if you write every day, it comes pretty easily, right? You've gotten to a place where you can tap into it pretty quick. But if you haven't written for a while, a lot of the time you'll sit and stare at that blank page, and man, does it just suck. It's really just not fun to sit there and think, well, what should I write? How do I start? And again, it's just like those questions with meditating, right? You sort of build into this place where you just go. And anytime I can get there where I allow the distractions not to pull me away, I'll just write so much better. I write so much more, faster, more efficiently. And it's this sort of, like I said, it's sort of this mythical secret sauce we can all tap into. And that's why it's just such an important concept to me. So that's why I have the triangle on my arm. And then actually earlier, mid 2018, I got my second one, which is just an envelope on the same arm up further on my arm. Mm-hmm. And that one is just, I just call it the delivery tattoo. It's just like, I went through probably a couple years where I was just like, tired of this is pretty early in my 20s, where I was just had a million projects. They were all a quarter to a half finished. They were all super exciting and nothing got done. And that was obviously very frustrating. And so into my 20s, late 20s, realizing that, yes, there are so many exciting things in the world. There's so much that you want to do with your life, but you need to just choose a few and finish them, and then you can move on. And after a few years of like really shipping hard, starting Break the Twitch, of writing a book, starting a podcast, starting a YouTube channel, like doing all this stuff and building it to a point now for 5 years that things are pretty well sustaining. I wanted to just embody that concept of shipping. Like it's better done than perfect. So yeah, those are my two very, well, what is permanent really, but those are the two permanent markings on my body that weren't there when I was born.
You did not disappoint, Anthony. Those are the most intentional tattoos I've ever heard of. I mean, you have this incredible story and life philosophy that is explained in both of them. So I commend you for that, and not just getting like a tribal band out of a book or something.
Well, I have one of those on my ankle. I'm just kidding. Yeah, on my ankle. No, just kidding. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Do you have any tattoos?
Oh, I don't, because I think when I start to think about it, I know you said like what is permanent, but I hesitate to do something that is close to permanent like that. But maybe one day. Your explanations were certainly inspiring.
I'm glad. It's I think in the end I could have gone either way, to just not have any, but at a certain point I realized it was just something I wanted to do, and I've appreciated it ever since. So
yeah. And you said the shipping idea. Is that a Seth Godin inspiration?
Seth Godin has inspired me in more ways than one. I love that guy, and his philosophies. I haven't really ever gotten into his whole thing about like, this is how shipping for a business is like an elephant circus. He like does these weird, he tells great stories and stuff, but just some of the core things that he said on, I remember the Tim Ferriss podcast where Seth Godin was on. That particular episode inspired me a lot, hearing more about how he lived and choices he made around food, around email and helping people and different things. So he's been an inspiration in more ways than one.
Yeah, and you met him, right?
Yes, I met him at the Craft and Commerce Conference in Boise, Idaho.
Mm-hmm. And he had a quote there that was of significance to you. He said something along the lines of, "Everything we have now is a gift from our past selves." How did that all shake down?
It was great, man. So he gets up and does this amazing kind of 30-minute keynote, right? He's the keynote speaker. It was good. It was great. Didn't really have any big takeaways from it personally, because it was basically to a bunch of, they're called creators now. So people that are creating content on the internet, doing art, trying to make a living from it. And so he was basically saying, like, make your thing and find a community to help, right? So that was kind of his message, which I've heard before and I believe in already. So there's that. But afterwards, he does this like 25-minute Q&A session where it's this super casual thing, and they have that weird foam microphone ball that you just like throw around, which I had never seen before. And so, they're throwing it around and people are taking in the audience. And this woman asked this question about a passion project that she had for years, invested tens of thousands of dollars into it to build this thing. And she now hates it and she doesn't want to do it anymore. But she feels so attached to it and feels so invested that she can't leave it behind. And his answer to that just blew my mind. And it's, again, maybe obvious because it's the idea of the sunken cost myth, or the myth of sunken cost. But the way he answered it really blew my mind. And that was that everything yesterday or before you has done and is simply a gift to yourself today. It's work that a past you put in and is handing you every day, every moment. And right now it is up to you to decide if you want that gift or not. The work is done. It's in the past. And now it's up to us, because present us didn't do any work for it. This is us now in this moment. And we get to choose. So if a relative or if a friend handed you that project and they had spent all that money on it and said, here, like, this is for you. Do you want it? Is this going to help you? You can say no. You can maybe take it and not use it or regift it. I don't know, depending on what it is. But you get the idea, right? It's like, we only have this moment. And that's like the most cliche way to put it. But we only have this moment. And we really don't have time or energy to devote ourselves to things, to stuff, to maybe people that are no longer serving us is the wrong word, because I believe that we get the most joy from serving others, but maybe that are no longer serving our ability to show up in the world that allows us to serve the world in the way that makes the most sense. And so I really, really liked that. That was an impactful moment from Seth. Yeah.
Mm. Did you have any words with him when you met him?
There was probably 10 people in line to meet him and take pictures with him. So I made a point of not taking a picture with him, actually, and just kind of instead taking a quick moment to just say, thanks for your work, and I've really enjoyed it, and it's been incredibly beneficial. So thank you. And that was pretty much the extent of it, because there were just so many people there. There wasn't really a lot of time for a conversation.
So you skipped the selfie to take those few seconds instead to have a couple words.
I did. I was standing in line for a while, and everyone, and I don't blame people for this. Like, I totally get wanting the thing, but like wanting the picture, the proof, the thing that you saw the guy, right? Mm-hmm. And I get that, and I shoot no shade at anyone that wants this, right? But just for me personally, I was seeing this happening time and time again, and he looked tired. Right? Like, to me, he looked tired. He just done this keynote and he was taking pictures with all these people. And maybe even me wanting to stand in line and shake his hand and thank him was self-serving for me in the first place, right? Like, needed to tell him that he was beneficial for my, like, I have to tell him thank you. And so maybe even that was self-serving. I don't know. But at the end of the day, I saw that people were just kind of seeing him like a little bit like just a figure to take a picture with, instead of that. And I just in that moment decided that I didn't want to do that. I don't know. I'm not taking a greater moral stance here on anything, but for some reason it didn't quite feel right.
Yeah. Well, it's an amazing testament to how you live the things that you talked about, though. You passed on the picture for the chance to have the actual human interaction, and that just shows who you are. And another thing that I really admire about you too is that you hit on here is that you don't push guilt with all these ideas. How do you prevent or separate yourself from the guilty messages that people could have about not being as intentional, as minimal, as strong with their habits as they could be?
Yeah. Well, firstly, I appreciate your kind words. It means a lot to me. And, it's really, the guilt thing is just through self-experience, that the experience of doing something that doesn't align, feeling bad about it, falling off the deep end of feeling like guilty about it, which just generally leads you to do more of the thing that sort of fix that discomfort in the first place. It's just kind of how any sort of comforting thing. I'm kind of losing the words for it right now, but I realized that starting with, like, body image is a big thing that people talk about a lot. Mm-hmm. And the whole kind of like body positivity movement is something that some people criticize, because it's like, well, we shouldn't glorify bodies that are not healthy, right? And maybe there's an element of that we shouldn't, but at the same time, I feel like you take care of what you love. And the current media environment, the current just societal environment, makes it very hard to love a body that doesn't look like we're told it's supposed to look, which makes it that much harder to take care of. And so really, we need to start from a place. This is what I've realized. To solve any problem, we need to start from a place of loving the thing we want to take care of, be it our body, our minds, and feeling guilty. Yes, I mean, we shouldn't just be carefree about the things, the choices we make. Obviously, everything has implications, but starting it from a place of love, realizing that, like, okay, I messed up today, but that doesn't change where I'm headed, what I'm doing, and I'm going to do the best I can, from here. And starting there is just so much more effective than getting caught in a guilt spiral. So that's why I always emphasize this, or do my best to try to. It's like, don't feel bad about checking your phone 100 times a day. Like, that's the average. But the realistic thing is that the technology is designed to do that. And it's just like, well, hey, we put a like button on Facebook, and now people on average spend 5 more minutes a day on it. So, cool. We're making more ad revenue. Cool. So we'll leave that. All right, let's test something else. Oh, we'll like do heart emojis and other stuff now. Oh, people that have those are spending another 5 minutes on average on Facebook every day, or Instagram now, whatever. Like, it just kind of developed out of algorithms and analytics to just get more usage time. And unfortunately, I don't know, I wasn't there in the room when any of these things were being decided, but
if only you had been,
I would have loved to be. But I'd like to think that the engineers and the people that are working on this are not evil. They're just trying to do their job, which is a public company, Facebook, build revenue for Facebook, return value to shareholders. And they're doing that by getting people to spend more time on their platforms. So is that inherently evil? I don't know. I don't think so, but there are obviously problems with it.
Well, Anthony, I think that this guilt-free approach, like you said, it will yield better results for people, and that's what is great about it. It takes what could be something that could be full of guilt and painful and miserable, and instead, like you said, you take it from a place of love, and it becomes a much more exciting prospect. But I do want to talk about comparison. I think that's in the same vein, and you've talked very eloquently about the comparison trap that people get into, and I loved a video that you made looking at Conor McGregor and talking about the $350 million joy thief.
Yes.
What was that about?
Thank you. Yeah, that video blew my mind. That video blew my mind. And just the where that video came from, and I just couldn't believe it. I had been on Instagram following along. I'm not even that big of like a UFC or boxing fan, but it was just hard to avoid the whole Conor McGregor Mayweather boxing match.
Mm-hmm.
It was just such a big event, and it seemed like it was getting coverage everywhere. And so I was sort of captivated by this whole thing where these guys were basically putting on a big show. They were both going to get super richer from it. And essentially, you've got the context here is that you've got this MMA mixed martial artist fighter, Conor McGregor, fighting Floyd Mayweather. I think he was 49-0 record in boxing at the time. Never really lost an official bout of boxing. And so they decided to go into the boxing ring for this kind of spectacle, right? And Conor McGregor obviously ended up losing because he's not a boxer. He did seem to do pretty well, and he stood up for a lot of rounds, but he still lost. In the end, through pay-per-views and all this other stuff, the guy made $100 million, and he lost, right? So Floyd Mayweather, I think, made around $400 million. Just inconceivable amounts of money for most people. But the story here continues with Conor McGregor, where he was out celebrating his $100 million payday. He had rented a yacht in the Mediterranean, and he was just having a blast. And I was watching this all happen through his Instagram account. And you'd see a picture of him posting it, smoking a cigar, wearing like a Gucci dress shirt, with it open, just like a bare shirt. It's just really funny because he's on a boat, right? And so you see him celebrating. The next picture is him on a jet ski. And there was one in particular that said his yacht was in the background, the one he rented. His yacht was in the background. He was on a jet ski. And the caption was, "I'll race you to the next yacht." And the very next one is this picture. I think it was like a day later it was so beautifully shot. I don't know who took that picture, but it was Conor's back looking up at this giant $350 million mega yacht. And it was something, I think it's called Sailing Yacht A, owned by the Russian oligarch Andrei Milnichenko, billionaire, right? So much bigger fish. A whale, you could say, even in this instance. And Conor McGregor's perspective about his own success changed, and it was posting like, wow, that was amazing. And it made him realize that he's not actually all that rich and that he still has a lot more work to do to get there. And that was a brief summary of the probably slightly longer video, but in essence, this guy made an inconceivable amount of money. He was broke like 7 years earlier, and this guy's $100 millionaire now, was already a millionaire a few times over at least. Mm-hmm. And seeing this billionaire step him up basically, or overshadow him in the Mediterranean during a celebration, completely changed his perspective, made him hungrier for more. And I just found that to be absolutely fascinating. And just the fact that it was shared through his own Instagram in live, like in real time, I thought was just really interesting.
Yeah. What do you think we can all take from that?
There's always a bigger fish, there's always a bigger fish. And it's not just a bigger fish in the money pool. It's a bigger fish in the physicality pool, a bigger fish in the kindness pool. Like there's always going to be someone that's willing to sacrifice more. There's always going to be someone that's willing to work harder that has more money, more connection. And that if we expose ourselves and allow ourselves to see that and affect us negatively, sometimes it can be motivating in the right context, but if we allow it to affect us negatively, we're really doing ourselves no service. And there's an element of that too that simply comes down to the idea that you can't compare yourself to someone that has more if you're not willing to do what they have done to get it. It's very easy to look at other creators on YouTube and the internet things. It's like, more than ever, you used to just kind of have to trust someone if they looked rich, right? Like if they made themselves look wealthy, you're not looking at their bank account, their assets and liabilities. You don't really know. But now you can see how many followers someone has. Maybe some of them are fake, but in general, like you can see how many followers someone has, how many likes their posts are getting, like how much influence they have, how many YouTube subscribers they have, how many comments they're getting. And it's very easy to compare your own success in that way to the success of others. But if someone is doing better than you, but they're also working 10, 12 hours a day, creating content, they're consistently uploading 3 videos a week for years, and they're more successful than you, and you're not doing those things, well, it's like you can't really be you can't really be jealous of that, because if you're not willing to do the work too, or have the miserable times of what it takes to publish a book, sure, he's a New York Times best-selling author, some person, right? An imaginary person, but you realize the self-doubt, the pain, like the editing. No one ever thinks about the years of writing and getting beat up by an editor and the deals and negotiating the book offer and all this stuff that goes into that success, that level of achievement, well, let's call it. So there's some perspective on comparison. It is a trap unless you have like a really good friend that you're sort of competitive with. This is the one example I found that I keep seeing in relationships of my own, where 2 people in my life will be really good friends and they'll be really competitive with each other and kind of like chop each other down, but they really care about each other a lot. And this is a very interesting relationship to me that I've been observing more and more and find very interesting, because to me, it elevates both people when you're helpful to each other, but also kind of have this weird competitive nature as well. So it's a very interesting thing, and I won't pretend that I have a psychology degree here and that I can understand it, but there's some fascinating stuff around this.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about the friends in competition sort of thing either, too, in the way that we can sharpen each other. Your example made me think of, I forget exactly who the people were, but some of the big writers of the 1900s, like I think it was C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien maybe, and maybe someone else, used to get together at a pub and go over their writing and really rip it apart, but in the end make it better. And now their work has stood the test of almost 100 years.
It's how it happens. I'm pretty sure if you look back to very few people did this in a silo. Very people achieve a certain level of, I hate the word success because it's so vague, but a recognition, let's say. Very few people receive a certain level of recognition by going into a room and emerging, right? Success is almost always collaborative. It's almost always shared. And we really rely on other people to level ourselves up. There might be a monk or two that really disagree with me here, but I'll stand by my words.
Yeah. Anthony, I want to talk about one practical thing that you hit on that I don't know if I've ever heard anybody put words to it quite the way that you do. You talk about people taking false first steps. What is that, and how can we get around it?
That is a great question. I'm so glad you asked it. The false first step is literally a false first step. It is a thing that we do, usually buying something, that makes us feel like we've taken a step towards our dreams, towards the things that we want. If we want to learn Spanish, buying a book that teaches Spanish or something, and then sits on the shelf, was a false first step. And we can do this over and over and over. Running shoes when we don't already even go outside, to go walk. Different things. All these things can be a first step if we allow them to be. But most of the time, from what I've seen and from the responses I've gotten to that particular blog post, most of the time, these purchases, the new yoga mat, the new yoga pants, the headband, are things that come before we actually put on the shoes we have and go outside or establish a habit of doing any of those things. And a lot of it, I think, has to do with modern marketing telling us that Nike's slogan is just do it, but first buy some sneakers. That's the part they forgot to put on the end of their slogan, right? And it's the messaging that comes around like the identity of stuff and who we are, as in who are we through the stuff that we own and the books on our shelves and the resources and tools that we have and buy. So the false first step essentially is this way that robs us of our money and doesn't really get us any further along in this particular instance.
Yeah, for me, it was a guitar. I remember when I was 20, maybe 21, I went and I bought a guitar, but I didn't play it for weeks until I sat down with my friend Calvin and said, yeah, I got a guitar. You know how to play guitar. And then I didn't even use mine at first. I used his, and he showed me some chords before I ever really started to pick up mine. So it's so easy to get into.
It is.
If people want to know more about this stuff, if they want to learn from you and get involved with you and your work, where should they look for you online?
The best place to find everything I do is right at breakthetwitch.com. And that is the central hub. And on social media, at breakthetwitch.
Cool. And on your website, you have a number of offerings, right? You have the blog, is the member community there?
Yes. So we have the blog. There is the interview-based podcast where we interview people around intentionality, simply called Break the Twitch as well. I kept it really simple and called everything Break the Twitch. The book is called Break the Twitch, which is on the website as well. And then there's the member community, which is this online community where we have audio courses that we release every single month. There's a library of these 21-day audio courses. I do a 20-minute welcome call with all new members that come in. And it's just this amazing, supportive online community of people that are focusing on minimalism habits and creativity in their own lives and helping the rest of the community do the same.
Wow. All right. Well, we'll be sure to put links to that down in the show notes. And Anthony, my final question for you, we've talked a lot about individuals, but I'm curious, how can a leader create a team culture of intentionality?
That's a great question. I think that communication is probably the best way to lead a team into intentionality. And that is really thinking about the things that you're asking of people and making sure that those things are actually the thing that needs to be done. It's very easy to meet about things. It's very easy to do things about things without ever really doing the thing. And that's what busy work looks like. That's what a lot of the kind of distraction-based environment we live in with social media, that sort of thing. And so as a leader, I would say the first thing that I would do with a team that I might have in a corporate setting or in an entrepreneurial setting is focus on removing distractions so the employees can implement the habits and the things that they will know will get their work done, get the mission forward, and make sure that, obviously, as Simon Sinek always says, start with why.
Anthony, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Brendan, thank you for having me.
Everybody, that was Anthony Ongaro from Break the Twitch. And if you want to help us get more great guests like this on the show, then be sure to subscribe, and we'll catch you next time.